Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Pick Trail Nation Show. We sit down with our very own basketball insider, Kevin Mcpherson. How you doing today, Kevin? It was a big weekend for Arkansas basketball now.
CJ, you look back at last year when they ran out and won 12 in a row to get into the SEC tournament, and something like that hadn't been done since the 90s, and you're going, how often is something like that really going to happen? It's generational. Well, a year later, we're looking at a run of 13 out of 14 games that they've won. Right. Their last 3 home games, then number 1 Tennessee, Auburn. Then it was a top 15-ish ranked Tennessee team, and then it was Kentucky, number 6 in the country yesterday. So I don't know how you keep stacking that kind of success without understanding the relevance of it, because it's not just relevant in historical purposes for Arkansas, but this season. I mean, this is a team now that's playing, you have to say, the hottest basketball in the SEC for sure. Arguably in the country, you see a lot of top 5, 6 teams get knocked off yesterday. But the Razorbacks are playing this well at the right time of year. You'd rather be in February pushing toward March than any time of the year. But Kentucky, that's the blue blood of the SEC. It's arguably the top program of all time. So anytime you beat Kentucky when it's a relevant program and a strong team, you've got bragging rights. I think Arkansas, like it has done so much this year, was more resilient at the end. The tougher team, the one that found ways. And again, that's the character of your team. You'll take that all day long over any other little negatives or picadillos that pop up, because you've always got to overcome something, and this team finds ways to overcome adversity.
They've been doing it all year, and we talked earlier before the show started about the 2-man game between J.D. Note and Jalen Williams down the stretch. And that 2-man game is always a positive going down the stretch, whether J.D. is getting somebody open or hitting step-back jumpers. Jalen Williams hit some big shots. It was just huge going down the stretch.
Yeah, and you've got the supporting cast as well. But if you look at a game like that, Arkansas has that early 15-0 run. Kentucky looked a little confused. Of course, their 2 star backcourt players were playing off the bench and missed the previous 2 games. That had something to do with it. Kentucky's a good coming out of the gate second-half team, and they outscored Arkansas pretty quickly by 7 points to take a 1-point lead, and then it was back and forth. But you talk about J.D. Note for a while, everything was really running through him in that 2-man game. He scored a lot of points. Had to take some shots to do it, but he also was setting guys up off his moves in penetration. So I thought that really kept Arkansas in the game. And for a while there, it was him and Tshiebwe scoring back and forth once it became a seesaw game. And I think at the end, Arkansas absolutely needed other guys to step up. Now, look, the supporting guys have been playing well through the game, but offensively, I think Arkansas needed more, and they got it. Yeah. Jalen Williams, 10 of his 16 points in that stretch of consecutive at the end of the game. Again, it was a seesaw game. Stanley Amude steps up and hits 3 threes in this game, a big one late to give Arkansas the lead. Devo Davis, who's made threes late in games, gets fouled on one, makes all 3 free throws to put Arkansas back ahead when they were trailing. So you have the supporting cast, but when I look at J.D. Note and Jalen Williams consistently, I mean, Note, his 3rd 30-point game of the season, 8 assists, was one off his season high. First player in the SEC in the last 25 years, the only player in the last 25 years to put up that kind of combination, 30 points, 8 assists against an AP top-ranked team. And then Jalen Williams, 6 consecutive double-doubles, CJ, and his 11th in his last 15 games. And again, there were times where you felt like Tshiebwe might be getting his way, but Williams rebounded the ball well throughout the game. He did other stuff, but the offense, he was not feeling well. We understood he was sick at halftime, but the offense came late. And I thought just a combination of other guys in concert with Note, who had carried that team offensively, I thought was what put Arkansas over it. And I mentioned before, the toughness, the mental toughness of this team. They find ways, because we know the defensive end has been their calling card. Right. There were times in this game where it was just really hard to stop Kentucky, with Keon Brooks playing above the rim, Tshiebwe having his way inside, and then, Wheeler and Ty Washington, the freshman. I talked about that backcourt. They played off the bench and did some good things. Very good Kentucky team. This is a national title contender. Musselman said it, but it's obvious. So you're not going to just shut everybody down, but the question becomes, what are you going to do to fix it? Arkansas, again, finds the ways. I mentioned the individual players, but I didn't mention Trey Wade, who I thought did a good job defensively, and he helped Arkansas set the tone early. And Odie Stoney, of course, did some good things as well at both ends of the floor, put his name in there, because Arkansas, I thought their top 6 rotation, with a little help from Kamani Johnson, too, big 50-50 ball win, got a basket, gave Tshiebwe something to consider physically inside. So I thought when you looked at 7-8 guys coming in, Arkansas obviously got it done. Again, they're 4-0 against AP top 25 teams this year. 3 of those have come at home. One was on the road against an LSU team that's not ranked now. but they got to 5-4 in quad one games. At one point in time, they were 1-4. So they've continued to win those games over the last few weeks. 5-4 in quad one. That's going to help the resume.
They've beat some big-time teams in these last couple of weeks of basketball, Kevin. And speaking of the AP rankings, about 7 or 8 out of the top 10 in college basketball rankings yesterday fell in the top 10. They all lost, which is absolutely crazy stat. I think it's one of the craziest days we've ever seen in college basketball history. Could Arkansas fall into that top 10 now with this big-time win over Kentucky? Because they took one of those top 10 teams out.
Yeah. I think Arkansas is playing like a top 10 team. It's so funny. The pieces have always been there. We talked about in the preseason, but they never looked like a top 10 team when they were ranked there. They were kind of disconnected. Even when they were winning before they went in that little stretch where they lost 5 or 6. They've looked like a top 10 team for a while, so the rankings will sort themselves out. I don't know if Arkansas is going to jump from 18 to 10. I think they probably should be in that top 10. That doesn't mean it's going to happen. But let's look at this for a minute. I mean, you talk about the SEC and how much credit and value has been placed on teams like Auburn, Tennessee, Kentucky.
Right.
Arkansas is right in the thick of it. They're in a 3-way tie with the Cats and the Vols for second place. Only one game behind Auburn, who was one of those teams that lost yesterday at Tennessee.
Right.
And the Hogs own all the tiebreakers. So if Arkansas doesn't lose out, if it can win out and Auburn drops one of its last 2, Arkansas is the number 1 seed. So any tie in the top 3 seeds, 1, 2, or 3, any tie with any team and Arkansas is in there, Arkansas is going to get the seeding nod because of the combined and individual head-to-head. It's already decided, even though Arkansas plays its season finale at Tennessee, even if it loses that game, if the Hogs are in any kind of tie, first, second, or third with any of these teams at the top, Arkansas will get the seeding nod. So that's been decided. And Arkansas did lock up, by the way, even if the Hogs lost out, they can do no worse than the 4 seed. And we know the top 4 seeds in the SEC tournament get a double bye to the Friday quarterfinals.
Right.
It's a gauntlet. Some teams would have to win a lot of games just to get to the final. Arkansas, by now being locked into that Friday quarters, doesn't have as much work to do, and they get to rest. So Arkansas is in great shape. They want to finish the season strong. You've got LSU at home to close out the Bud Walton Arena. I guess it's senior night for the seniors on Wednesday, and then they go back on the road against another ranked team against Tennessee. That won't be easy. But the way Arkansas is playing right now, you don't bet against them. You don't pick against them. It doesn't matter what betting spreads are. This team finds ways to win.
They find ways to win, whether somebody's going out sick at halftime like Jalen Williams was, whether it's J.D. Note in foul trouble, they always find a way to win. And they've done that against Tennessee. They've done it against Kentucky. They've done it against Auburn. Like you said, they have the tiebreaker if this gets tied in the top 4. And starting off 0-3, Kevin, my goodness. And going from the bottom all the way to the top, you can just tell it's just 2 totally different Arkansas teams.
Yeah. And so you've got the same pieces. There were rotation tweaks. We talk about that. But I think a lot of it is just getting guys to buy in that were newcomers. Musselman, he turns his roster over at least in half every year, brings in really good players. So you see the pieces there. It's just getting those guys to play together in a way that he imagines it, the way that Musselman imagines it. And sometimes it just takes, you might have 1 or 2 guys buying in and getting it while 1 or 2 are trying to play catch up. Maybe you need to tweak the rotation. He did some of that. So it's a combination of many factors.
Yeah.
But once guys start seeing and believing, and then the success comes, it kind of snowballs. And right now, I mean, you look at some of these teams, I don't know that collectively Arkansas has put the same talent on the floor as some of these teams. But they're so well coached. They make great in-game adjustments. And the game planning going into it is, in my opinion, second to none in college basketball because of how many times Arkansas takes away the other team's at least one of their top 3 options and gives them a bad game. And when you do that, the other team now is uncomfortable. They're not getting what they're used to getting. And so now you've got them on their heels. And especially when you've gotten some of these games at home, I mean, Arkansas benefited by getting, let's face it, Auburn, Tennessee, and Kentucky at home. But at the same time, you want those matchups at Bud Walton Arena. You want that place to be magical. And that's what Musselman said. He goes, look, this place, when we're winning, when we've got to go in, is magical. He's right. And it's stuff that folks that have been around for a while back in the Nolan days and, Eddie, when this program's been strong, you're starting to get a sense. There's a reminiscence of those days gone by. But there's still a lot of basketball even to be played here with the regular season coming to an end because everybody focuses on postseason. What did you do then? Still work to do for this Arkansas team. But right now it does bring back images and memories from the golden era of Arkansas Razorbacks basketball. And it's not just a one, like I said, you look at the run the team went on last year, they're doing it again this year. So it's not like just a one off.
Right.
Anybody that went through it last year is wondering this, this is just this could be a generational thing. I mentioned that earlier. Right now, we're seeing that this might be the DNA of this program right now, because once they get things figured out, they seem to be moving ahead of other programs, even some really good ones.
They're moving ahead very fast, winning their last 13 out of 14 games. We'll just put them in the NCAA seeding coming up, because last time I checked, I believe they're number 6, and I think they deserve to be higher than that.
Yeah. I think what's really dragging Arkansas down right now are a couple of bad losses. Hofstra is now outside the net top 100. That makes that a quad 3 loss. Vanderbilt, it's oscillating between a quad 3 and a very low quad 2 loss at home. Those things are dragging Arkansas down a little bit. And then they've got, other than those 2 games, they've still got 4 more losses. The Oklahoma loss is not standing up as well as that team has suffered. And, you've got several teams outside or right at that top 50 net or outside of it, so that you lost to in that 5 or 6 game stretch. So that's still dogging Arkansas, even though they're stacking up these wins. But I think if Arkansas has a strong finish, let's say they get to 2-0 this week, or even split, I think this team right now to me looks like a 4 or 5 seed. I don't know, what else it's got to prove to put that down and stamp it going into the SEC tournament.
Right.
But if winning these last 2 games doesn't do that, I'll be surprised. But I think this is a 5 seed team. If the season ended today, I think it'd be a 5 with a chance to be a 4. And then if you run through the SEC tournament, it went out now and run through the SEC tournament, you might have a long shot to flip another team out in the league pecking order from a 3 seed. So I think Arkansas, I think potentially could get that high, but probably best case is probably right now 4. Just looking at it, CJ.
Yeah, those early losses kind of killed them. That Hofstra loss was a big one, especially on the road. And like you said, out of the top 100 teams. But let's go to yesterday. Back to yesterday at Kentucky win. A lot of recruits were in the building. A lot of former Arkansas Razorbacks were in the building. How important was it for those recruits to see yet another top 10 win taking down Kentucky yesterday in that loud Bud Walton Arena?
Listen, this basketball staff has done an outstanding job recruiting, and it's because of decisions to bring in high-level guys in games and environments like this. I mean, it just starts snowballing. I keep talking about the win snowballing, but recruiting, I mean, it's strategic. They've had 5 stars coming in just about for every one of these games, for all of them, actually.
Right.
That we've talked about in the last 5 or 6 weeks. And then you've had Nick Smith Jr. and Jordan Walsh already signed, but they're both at Bud Walton Arena showing support for the program, in the building, calling the Hogs during the timeout, at center court.
That was huge.
Got to interview Jordan, got to see Nick at his senior night the night before in North Little Rock, go out with a win. But it starts there. And then you had Bay Fall class of 2023, a 6'10", 5-star big man out of Denver Prep Academy in Colorado. He and his teammate Asani Diop, another 6'10" big man who's a top 35 national 4-star. So you had a 5-star top 10 guy, a top 35 4-star teammates, both 6'10". They both have Arkansas offers. They're highly interested in the Hogs. They were there for the game. After the game, this tells you, after Musselman gets done with his post-game press conference and the staff moves back over to the Performance Center, they're breaking down game footage and going through final parts of their visit for those 2 big men. They've got them in, so they're still doing work after the game's over. No time to celebrate. They're doing film review in there with those guys, and those guys got out of there shortly after that. Spent a little time, on this visit. It's an unofficial visit, but it went well from everything I'm told. Both players have a high level of interest in Arkansas. And then you had the Blocker brothers from Central Arkansas, Layden Blocker, class of 2023, 6'2" point guard who's at number 1 Sunrise Christian Academy, the top team in the country, getting ready for the Geico National Tournament for the high school national title next month. But he was on an unofficial visit, just an outstanding 2-way player, and has really been a key guy on a loaded Sunrise Christian team as a starter, running that team at the point guard. So he was on an unofficial visit. He's been on an unofficial visit before, so it's not his first time.
Right.
I think Arkansas is definitely he's got a final 7 schools, some really good teams in there, but I think Arkansas is in great shape for him. And then his younger brother, Landon Blocker, a 6'4" guard who's still here in Little Rock at Little Rock Christian Academy. He's class of 2024, so he was a sophomore this year. But Landren's a little bigger, 6'4". He's a shooting guard, wing, physical guy, very good basketball player, already getting high major interest. So the Blocker brothers were in the house. We mentioned Bay Fall. We mentioned Asani Diop, and then you had Jordan Walsh and Nick Smith. But when you're bringing in guys that are already signed, guys that you're highly coveting, and then you've got a high-level guys from the state. So you're checking all those boxes. You're making sure you're covering all bases. And what better way to do that to bring them into an environment like that? These players are still in their seasons, right? They've still got playoffs or tournaments, makeup, whatever is going on, and you find ways to say, we want you in here, and we're recruiting you, and you're a priority. And so I think Arkansas continues. When you look at the parade of 5 stars and high-level guys they brought in the last 5-6 weeks, continues to show that it understands how recruiting works at a very high level. The number 2 class right now in 2022, CJ, we know that. They're still trying to get Anthony Black. And everything I'm hearing is Arkansas feels really good, by the way. Let's do a little Anthony Black update. Arkansas is feeling really good about its chances to get him. And I think we're, like he told me last week at the Tennessee game when I interviewed him, he said it's going to be in March sometime when he makes a decision. So that's the likely time frame that we're going to hear something from Anthony Black, the 5-star of Texas, 6'7", combo guard. But I think Arkansas is in a great spot with him as well.
That's a big guard. And I was on the baseline yesterday, Kevin. I seen these big guys walking up with Ronnie Brewer. I was like, who are these guys? Like, geez, they must be recruits because these guys were super tall. And I think they were the 2 6'10" guys you were just speaking about a few minutes ago.
So those guys got in. Like I said, they attended the game, but the time they spent afterward in the Performance Center, it just shows me again the work ethic of the staff and their understanding of what it's going to take to get those high-level players to understand. You had the excitement of a game, but let's get down to business. Let's show you what we're talking about. Breaking down film study, I think that's huge. And I know this staff has always done a good job with the recruits of not only selling what they have, but talking to the recruits. They break down their film. They look at them, and they give them hints and little tidbits on how to improve their game, what their strengths are, how they envision them as college players and potential pros, things they can work on. I think there's a value there. And every recruit I've talked to who's been in those scenarios on visits or interacting with the staff talks about that. That's one of the things that stands out about how the staff has genuine interest in helping them improve as players at a point in time where they're not signed and committed. Maybe they don't come to Arkansas, but those are the kind of little tools and helpful things I think that helps Arkansas land players too.
Yeah. When you bring it to an atmosphere like they were at yesterday with Kentucky and how loud that building was, over 19,000 fans, yet again, they still have one more home game. That'll be against LSU on Wednesday. That atmosphere should be rocking again, Kevin, for the last home game of the season. And senior day. Can't forget about the seniors at the Bud Walton Arena.
It's going to be big.
That's going to be big.
Arkansas, 2 years in a row now going in the SEC tournament, your fan base is not hoping for something. It knows the fan base knows the team's in the NCAA tournament. It's just a matter of seeding and how good can it get. And so this is when we talk, I keep using that word snowball. It affects everybody. And a Razorback fan base understands this time of year. And for the younger fans that weren't around in the 90s or at different times when it was going, they're starting to now understand expectation. You don't take it for granted. It's exciting though. But you go into something knowing, and you're not nervous. Are we going to make it? Now it's a matter of seeding, and I think that's always a fun place to be in because there's nothing like March Madness in college sports, if you ask me.
Nothing like March Madness, and Arkansas found a good way to turn it on, going straight into March. Kevin, I appreciate you stopping by, my man.
Thank you, CJ. Always good to be with you guys.
Yes, sir. And we'll have more Pick Trail Show after the break.